So you've been hearing about all of this vibe coding stuff. Heck, in fact, I've produced multiple videos on this. What I keep hearing from people is, how do I get started? What's my first step? Is there a good first project? What tools are you using? So today I'm going to answer all of that. We're going to go through a short little demonstration of how you get started vibe coding well. We're going to go through a couple of the tools that need to be installed and getting them installed. I'll describe the system just a little bit. I'll even point you out at a couple other systems that you might be able to use to do vibe coding that aren't using a sophisticated IDE or those kinds of tools. We'll describe that in a second. But today is all about getting started with vibe coding comfortably, slowly, easily, that will help you to stay successful going forward. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about vibe coding. It's this new term that's come around to really mean coding with natural language, but it also allows you to continue to iterate on it. Vibe coding is about saying, I kind of want a Tic Tac Toe application. Okay, it'll give you a Tic Tac Toe application. It might not have sounds and kind of animations. Your next step is, oh, I kind of like it blue. Let's make a blue one. So we'll do things just like that to show you what vibe coding is all about. But really, if you're scared of coding in any way but curious about creating apps, vibe coding is literally made for you. If you're an engineer and wondering whether or not vibe coding is too unsophisticated, it really can build very sophisticated applications. Today is again going to be an introduction into this. Let's actually dive in and start getting a few of the things installed so that we can vibe code. Okay, I want to describe the two applications that you're going to see me using mostly here. The first one is called SuperWhisper. It's a way for me to do speech to text. So that means that I'm going to be talking out loud so that you'll know what I'm saying and what I'm putting in as a prompt into Cursor, but then you'll see the text show up inside of the application. I'll give you an example of it here, but you can drop by SuperWhisper to download it, and it's free to use. There's a local model that you can download, so all of the transcription is done locally. So SuperWhisper is a great application that allows me to kind of just talk out loud and go see this really, really cool animation. And then when I'm done talking out loud, then it just plops it down as text. So that's kind of what you're going to see. That's that application. Let's talk about the next one. And it's arguably the more important one. Cursor AI is the application. You can find it at cursor.com that you'll need to install to follow along with what I'm doing here. But really, everything I'm going to talk about really works against everything. So this vibe coding concept can be used on many other applications. There's Bolt.new and Replit and a couple other players in this space that really do have good offerings that you can use on the web and just create an application directly doing it that way. We're going to download Cursor and SuperWhisper and get started. All right, so here we are in Cursor. There's a few things to describe. I would say every time you create a new file or a new project that you want to start, just create a new folder. My pattern is I create a code folder off of my root directory. I always go into it, create a subfolder named whatever my new project is, and that's what I open in Cursor. And we'll do that right now so that we can talk about the next step here. So I am in my code folder. I'm going to create a new one called Hello World, which is where you probably want to start. That will take me into the Hello World application, and I'm going to open it. And what I will do is I'll close everything. This is the editor itself with pretty much nothing except the text area exposed. No text file open, so we don't see anything. These buttons up top will help you open and close different panels. There's a panel on the bottom, on the left, and on the right. And the left one is where your files live. The one on the right is where we're going to spend the vast majority of our time. It's basically the best way to think of it is this is where Cursor lives. This is where our LLM lives. And then on the bottom is where our terminal lives, and that's kind of your shell environment, basically the background of your computer that is running these programs. And what I'm going to advise that we build is web programs. So programs that can be run in the browser. I'm going to do that for a couple reasons. A web program gives us a lot of surface area, gives us a lot of things you can build. So of course, in a web browser, you can do graphics, you can do animations, you can do videos, you can do just applications, you can do all kinds of interesting things in a browser. So from a starting point, if people are not completely aware of what they're trying to build, getting them into a browser as kind of a starting point tends to be a really safe place because you can do so much. Now, if you're here and you kind of know a little bit and you know what you want to build, feel free to not create a web application. Just telling you the reason I'm doing it is anybody getting started, it's kind of a safer place to get started. As a caveat, it's also a little bit complicated because often when you write something in a browser, you need to run a server. And that server needs to sit back there serving the application into your browser. So the browser points basically at the server and the server gives it the files that it needs. That's the relationship. relationship. Now, when you start Cursor, I'm not sure which mode everything will start in, so I'll go through it real quickly. But this is basically where you have your conversations. This first tab down here is kind of important. There is a way to have essentially only conversations with the LLM. So if I go into this, and also for a moment, forgive me, let me just go back to the very simple auto, because yours probably will start auto. I don't know if yours will start in ask or agent. We'll cover that in just a second. Let's presume it started in ask, and you just said, say hello to me. Sort of. All right. So this is just an LLM. At this point, we're just having a conversation with their auto model. Auto to Cursor. The Cursor team is trying to pick which model will best facilitate some questions in the future. So it's kind of their best guess, and it's really a good one to use for a while. You might be tempted at some point to move over to the thinking model. That's okay as well. It's slower, it makes much bigger changes, and it tends to change things that were unintended, but it does a very good job, especially when you might be stuck in a place that the auto model can't quite get you through. I'm going to move into agent mode. Basically what agent mode means is I'm giving you the privilege to make changes for me. Feel free to go and write in the files, make all the changes you come up with, create files, delete files, install things. All of that is what I want you to be able to do. I might have to guide you and say yes, yes, yes to move you forward, depending upon what setting you have in Cursor. So you might need to tell it yes over and over again as it says, oh, I'm about to do this. You want me to do it? Oh, I'm about to start the server. Do you want me to start the server? That might be asking you questions that you need to answer. And that's okay. There's ways to turn that off also in these settings that are up here. Later problem, won't cover it today, but if you ever want to stop being asked those questions, mine will be in that auto state so that I can talk while this is going on and I don't have to keep looking for the yes, yes, yes. So mine will probably have a behavior pattern that yours doesn't. Okay. Also, create a new chat. I am going to create a new chat very frequently. It's best to create a new chat when you're at a starting point of something new. Basically, jettison everything I've just had a conversation with and move on to the next one. Keeping a smaller context or history of your conversation will help the model perform better. It will make it faster and make it less expensive for you to use. That's questionable. This is free to use. Cursor has a very good free model mechanism, but you have a certain number of fast generations in a given day, which means kind of this will work very nice for a little while, and then it'll slow down a little bit and tell you, oh, you're in the queue. Here we are, we're going to build something. Hang on, you're waiting in the queue. I am in a pay model, so I won't see those here. Again, yours may react a little bit differently. You can, of course, get into the pay model. But even if you're in the pay model, using a huge context will eat up more of the tokens that you're allowed in your pay model and eventually hit a ceiling there as well. So basically, keep a small context. It will keep everything a little bit tighter in general. All right, with that, I am going to give you the first prompt that I think makes the most sense to type in. Create a React web application. We're starting at empty, basically. So what it's going to do, and the reason I'm telling you to type in create a React web application, really we didn't even need to type in the word web. It's almost guaranteed to choose React Web. So the React concept, what's behind React, is a framework that runs a lot of the applications on the internet that is almost all web-based. So it already gets you in that place. It also does a heck of a lot of work to make a dynamic application easy to build and easy to run and easy to manage. All right, so I'm gonna stop here for a second and say, this thing came back and said, sure, I'm gonna help you create a modern React web application, set up a React project using Vite with blah, blah, blah. I don't have to worry about that because we're not reading everything over here. It then is going to go and use npm to create Vite latest. Now, you may run into a place to where it says, oh, I don't have npm, you don't have Node. If you run into some weird statements like that, remember that you're in an LLM. Mine is sitting here waiting for me to respond. Yours may say, no, I'm done. I couldn't run that command. It failed. Or whatever that may be, whatever the case may be. If that's the case, as I say, remember you're in an LLM. You have several options here. If you're in agent mode, you can say, well, install Node for me. And it will get busy trying to install Node for you. Or you can say, can you explain to me how I would install Node? And it will tell you those. So the nice thing is you are really in essentially ChatGPT sitting here and you can solve your own problem. You can even tell it, you fix that. and it'll probably read its context and go, okay, you had this problem, let me install Node. So the nice thing is you really are in an agentic system that is controlling your operating system a little bit in this small little rectangle. In my case, I already had NPM installed. I'll presume you've moved forward. So mine is asking me, is it okay to proceed? Now, this is not actually Cursor asking this question. This is actually the React framework. Let's call it that. There's the thing we're installing as it started to go get installed actually was asking a question. This would typically be in your terminal window or somewhere else. So these windows are interactive sometimes, and I'm just going to hit enter because that means take the default that's denoted here. And then it'll take off and do all of the work that it needs to do. You'll see mine is not going to ask me more questions, I don't believe. So I think it's just going to run off and install everything because, like I say, I'm in that mode that'll auto execute the next step. And it's going to run off, do a whole bunch of things that we saw in the previous example. And then we'll see all of these changes here. And I'm going to pull open the file system over here so you can see what was empty before is now filling up with all of these files that it's creating. That's what our agent has written for the most part. The agent is writing a lot of these things over here. So, all right, once it's up and running, it has actually let it rest for a moment. It has actually gotten to the point to where it actually ran my server. So this npm run dev is a command, and you'll see, now let's start the development server so you can see your new React application. Let's say these are probabilistic, so I don't know that yours used Vite. Yours may have used a different way to install React. You may end up with the exact same thing I have or a little bit different. Just understand that's the way it goes. We could have given it a very explicit command at the front saying, please install a Vite version, the latest Vite version of a React application, blah, 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 the whole thing. And it probably would have come out 100% of the same between our examples, but that may mean that the run command or something like that is different for yours. Again, you're in an LLM, you can ask it. If it just sits here and says, good luck, and it's not running a server, you don't get a terminal popping up or one of these windows at the bottom popping up or something like this telling you this is what we're running, then you might be able to say, can you run this? Can you tell me how to load this in my browser? And it will do that. It'll answer all the questions that you want. Again, remember, you're in an LLM here. So, all right, with all of that, let's talk a little bit about what just occurred. Very briefly, I won't go through all of the different changes that are up here. I'm going to demystify a few things though. So it installed a bunch of applications. You see all this red and all of this green and the green here. What's really going on if we look inside of some of these files? There's a file called app.jsx, which you can see is right here. You don't have to care about this, but I want you to understand what you're looking at. This can look very confusing and scary to people that haven't seen this kind of thing before. Basically, this file was sitting here at rest, and then this change came in, and it said, oh, I'm going to have to go in and remove some values. I'm going to put active tab here. I'm going to put home over here. So this line is new, and thus it's green. But I don't need this line above, so I'm going to delete it, and thus it's red. What this is called is a diff. You don't have to care about it, but basically the green lines are the ones that have been altered or added, and the red lines are lines that have been removed or changed. Basically, all you really need to know is there's an accept all button at the bottom. If you're vibe coding for the first time, you're almost certainly only in need of the accept all button. All that does, these changes had already been made. All that does is moves the checkpoint forward to say, okay, everything that's here, presume all those changes are okay. And it just takes away all this red and green view stuff. So now all you see is what was essentially the green stuff. It's all the final file. Okay, now that we're here, we know how these files are changing, what they look like when they're changing. I don't need them. I'm going to close the two files, and let's talk about this file that was open. So essentially it looks like a file. It's in our file window, but as I mentioned before, this was him starting the server. So this is actually my server running. Typically, again, I would run the server down here in the terminal window. Sometimes when Cursor wants to run the server itself, it will open it as a tab here in the window. And that causes a little bit of complexity sometimes, but it's just nice to know that sometimes there's something here that's running. This is actually a running server that I can hit Control-C on, and it's worth hearing Control-C. Control-C is the way to stop a server, both here and down here. But we'll get to that in a second. I'm sorry for bouncing around a little bit, but the confusion of this being in a tab, I think, is so high. I wish the Cursor team would change this, because very often you will already have your server running down here, and the LLM is unaware of that, and it doesn't interrogate this file or this area, this panel, well enough to know that a server is running, and it'll start another server. And modern systems know how to create a new port. So you'll see this one started on 5173. Not something you have to worry about, except if I went to my browser and typed in localhost :5173, it would point basically to this window and start loading the files. So it's going to work off of that port. If I had done localhost 5174, it wouldn't work because, of course, this is only the port that it's running on. That's the one that's active. If I start another version of this, then often what you will see down here is, oh, port 5173 is already in use. Sure, let me bump +1 and try the next one. And so it found 5174. So now I have two servers running on different ports. So you might think that the one that you're saying, oh, I don't want this one, Control-C, that's the way to break out of it. I don't want that one, but when I reload my browser, it still reloads. Why is that? It may be very well because they have one of these active tabs open, a shell tab open. Just so that you're aware, to me, that's a high complexity, as there's a bunch of files that start opening tabs and start opening that you're not necessarily paying attention to, and you think you're in control of your server down here. That's all. So, all right, with that in mind, I'm going to close that, get back to what they left us with, and if I command click this in Mac, then it will load our browser with our application. So this is the React application that loaded up by default, and we would say, yeah, that's terrible. And what we want to do is come over here very quickly and say, awesome, thanks for creating an application. Can you basically get rid of everything because it's pretty darn ugly? Something like that. I don't know what it's going to end up with, but it's going to go and make some changes, of course. We'll see all these deletes. We kind of now know what we're looking at. You can see back here that the browser did change, and it's trying to center it at this point. It centered it. We'll call that centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set our browser off to the side just so that we can see any changes that come up in it. With all of this showing, and we now have an application that's running. You have a web application, and you just saw we just destroyed everything in one simple command, and it now says hello world. This is where you can then start making new things occur. I could, from the very beginning, have said, create a Tic Tac Toe application. And it could have created anything. It could create a Python application. It could create an iOS application. It could create anything. So I need to be a little bit more descriptive. And that's why we started with this React Web thing. So that's the intention. That's the important part. If you're just getting started, keep starting with that prompt. Start again and again with that prompt. You'll get back to this. You can say, remove everything, say hello, and then you know from here, great, what else can I do? When I am in a file, if I hit this plus, the file that you're in, or really the foremost tab, will become the context to the chat. And what that really means is the contents of this file are being sent along with whatever I say. That becomes very important when you're trying to focus the conversation that you're having with your agent. Agents, again, will reach out and look for things that they can look at. They're looking at everything. Just the context you're giving them here doesn't necessarily constrain them from looking around at other things. If you really only want to look at this file, say that within the prompt that you're asking for, or go back to ask mode and have a conversation and just paste over the things you want. Or like we just did, go over to the file itself and do edit within the file itself. Those are the ways to kind of keep it highly constrained if you ever need it. I'm assuming we don't need that here as we're just learning the vibe code, but just so you're aware how this context thing works, if I needed two files as I tab around, you can see that my context is switching because I don't have any conversation yet. So if I said, what is this file doing? It has this file as the context because it's the active tab. And this will give me a good description of what's happening inside of this file. So this is what I was describing. You can actually ask about the things that are in the project if you're not sure. If you look in here and say, I don't have any idea what all of this is about, you'll notice I changed the foremost active tab, but down here, it did not change our context. Only when it's a brand new conversation will that attachment occur. So just switching tabs is not enough to switch your context. That might matter if you're saying, what about this? What's wrong with this? Those kinds of words. If you want to say, okay, let's go back to app CSS and ask the question. In fact, I will show you these past chats down at the bottom. There's ways to get back to your previous chats in that area that we just saw at the bottom. So if you clear this or you show the chat history, here's the ways that you can get to previous conversations that you've been having. As we were in here, this has reference to the app CSS file, again, as it did before. If I move over to package and say, I want to know more about this file, there's a couple ways that I can do it. I can hit the X here and remove this. I can hit this and add new items. So now I can have 2 items being sent in. I might not need that if I'm trying to say, what is this about, right? If this is my question, just understand what's really occurring is you're focusing your question for these 2 different files. I can remove that one, hit send. It's going to tell me about the package.json file because that's the context that I've given it. So with all of that, let's make this thing do something fun. Make this play Tic Tac Toe. And this is a mess. I don't have any idea why it's doing it this way. What a terrible way to do this. So great. It wrote a Python tic-tac-toe program for me. Isn't that cute? So no. All right. That does happen. Great. Gives me an opportunity to tell you about something else. So this thing's running off and doing things. I can reject, which will be the whole conversation if I haven't accepted, or I can go all the way back up to where my conversation, the point that I want to restore to, and hit restore checkpoint. I'll get a message that says, we're going to undo everything. Are you good with this? Yep. It's important to understand you can do that with all of these older chats as well. So we would be able to roll all the way back to the very first React system that we had or before that if we wanted. So now we've made this change and I'm going to say, make this React app play tic-tac-toe, and you'll notice the tic-tac-toe Python program disappeared. All of that rollback occurred, and now it realizes, oh, you're saying make the whole app that we're in play tic-tac-toe. Sure, I can do that. And now it's going forward and building it as part of the application. So if you ever get to a place that you say something, it does something really wildly different. First, you can roll back. But second, when you're giving it context, this is one of the reasons I advise talking to it, you can say very explicitly, hey, what I want is a web-based tic-tac-toe application that I'm going to be able to do X and Y. When I click on it, make it 9x9 and anything else that you might want to say. All right. So now we have our tic-tac-toe program. I don't know why it's set up in this mobile layout. Let's see if it's because, no, I don't know. I don't know what they've set up. Let's find out. I don't know what's going on with the styling here, but it's all stuck to the left side like it's stuck in a mobile platform. I don't want that. I want it centered in the window, right? This is a web browser application. It should be responsive and centered until I decide otherwise, right? All right. And it's going to go off and make all of those changes. Sure, fine. Okay. That's exactly. I don't know how it read my mind that I wanted a little tile for the application inside of the middle of some big window. Why wouldn't I want that? Excellent. You set the game. Works. Okay. All right. Welcome to vibe coding. So that's the way you vibe code. That's pretty much everything. You have everything. Let's have just a little bit of fun and create some of these applications. I think I'll do these a little bit rapid fire to have a little bit of fun. Let's see what we can do. Okay, Cursor, I'm interested in creating a bunch of little applications, and I want them all to be within this one application that we've built here so that I don't have to keep creating new apps. I think to do that, let's just make the front page kind of a set of links to the different pages that we come up with, and each page is its own application. I think to do that, make each page a whole folder so that if there's supporting stuff inside of them, it doesn't get super messy. But that might make it so that I can create one front page that's basically some kind of menu system that goes to the different apps that we build. Also, maybe a header bar or something that allows us to navigate back, or some way to get back to the front page every time would be nice. That just gets applied on all pages. Okay, so it did create something for us. To-do application that seems maybe empty? Hey, it looks like our to-do app is completely empty and it doesn't have the header. So maybe create an app for it to land on? That's a little bit strange. And I was hoping that we would have a tic-tac-toe app already as well, because that was what was already on the homepage. Can you create a to-do and a homepage, or a to-do and a tic-tac-toe app, please? Okay, it swears it's done. Let's take a look. Tic-tac-toe still plays. It's a draw. All right, how about our to-do app that we didn't ask for? Well, that was pretty cool. All right, excellent. Say I don't need that one. Hey, that's pretty awesome. That works fine. What's next? I want to build a little farming game, something simple, something fun, something that you keep track of. I don't know how many cows I have, and then I go to the store, I click on the store and I buy a new cow, but only if I have enough eggs and I need to get the chickens to lay the eggs to bring to the store so that I can buy a cow. And when I have a cow, I then get milk from the cow, and that I can bring milk back to the store and sell milk to buy wood to build a house, or something simple like that. Think you can do that? Okay, it's worth saying it did that very wrong to begin with. it started, I was watching, and I could see that it was starting a brand new application, like a brand new web React application like we started with in the first place. When you see that, I hit the stop button here down at the bottom, or you can just type in here and say, nope, hold up, and it will stop, hit enter. So you can interrupt this thing, and I just simply said, take a look around, you're supposed to create it in our apps folder in source. I want a new one that links to the front page and those kinds of things. And then it said, oh yeah, you're right. It removed the other stuff, started moving forward, just so you see it. Hey, with that farming game, I thought Bolt did such a good job that first time. I can put the same prompt here, let it run. Let's see what we end up with. All right, cursor's done. Let's see what we have here. Our farming game. I collect eggs and collect more eggs, collect more eggs. I mean, it's not exactly visual. Can I buy a chicken for 10 eggs? No. Let's see. There we go. I collected eggs. I bought a chicken. So, I can get eggs quicker with chicken. Okay, I'm digging that. Nice work. Now I get eggs much faster. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is actually not bad. I get it. So, what does it need? It needs a UI. Oh, you did a pretty good job here. This is pretty cool. I don't want to click buttons though. Can you create a little UI of a farm that has these things on it and maybe has my little character walking from one place to the other when I'm clicking on different things? Come on. Okay, Bolt got it. Let's see what Bolt got. All right, let's pull this down a little bit so that we can see it. There it is. Oh, I can just get chickens. All right, that's good. Let's see. A barn, house, cow. Oh, I got a cow. I think that's good. Am I waiting? I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I can get another cow. I don't know why. Producing eggs. They cost 5 wood. Oh, I'm getting eggs up here. Oh, it's time-based. Got it. Ooh, kind of neat. I see what you're saying. Can't build a house. There we go. Got all those eggs. I don't have any wood. So I've got milk. What does milk do? Milk. Nothing costs milk. Oh, that's a problem. Well, I'm going to end up with a lot of milk. I don't need any cows. Can I sell my cows? Help me sell my cows. I don't need any cows. That's weird. Okay, cursor finished. Let's see. What do we have? We have chicken coop. Collecting eggs. Excellent. What do I have? I have 1 egg. Can I collect more eggs? Click 8, click 9, click 10. Can I sell my eggs? I want to buy a chicken. So now I have 2 chickens. All right. So I need to go back up and I need to collect more eggs. Come on. It works. Excellent. Let's move on. What's next? I want to build some trippy, fun experiment that while I move my mouse around, things follow it and like bubbles or lasers or colors or rainbows or whatever you want. Just come up with something really trippy and put some things on the screen that when the cursor bumps into, something else happens out of those, like boxes or something else, that other things explode out of those things. I don't know what, just have some fun. This created our trippy experiment. Let's take a look. It's trippy. Everything seems to be jumping up to the top left on this trippy experiment. So this is an LLM that's multimodal, and it can take a look at the image and make a lot of sense out of things. So if you have something complex or just logs that you can't copy and paste in or anything else, take a screenshot and just drop it in. That really solves quite a bit many times. All right. Oh yeah. Now, it doesn't seem to move with me, but it did start there. Okay, build me a product page for a completely fantastical, amazing, ridiculous sci-fi object. Create some kind of system for an image pulling. Okay, so this one's great. The last change that it made, it tried to import a file that seems to not be a valid location. You don't have to know that. When you see an error, I am gonna do a Command A, select everything. I'm gonna copy it all. I will just come over, paste it, and let it do its thing. All right, it says it fixed it. Let's see what our quantum dreamweaver is all about. I like the nested header. Well, that's kind of a mess. Okay. Introducing the Quantum Dreamweaver 5000, universe's first dream-to-reality materialization device using cutting-edge quantum technology. Oh, all right, so this is our pièce de résistance. This is it. This is the big one. Okay, so here's what I want. I want you to follow the mouse movements. I want kind of visual stuff all over the place. Maybe just mousing around changes what I'm interacting with, what object on the screen. Things all over the place in weird ways. Circles and all kinds of weirdness. Each one of those, though, needs to have its own sound. No possible way. Oh, get over yourself. It says it's done. Let's take a look. Soundscape, huh? Oh, reading. You'll need to install Tone.js dependency. Wait, why would I need to install Tone.js dependency? Why don't you install Tone.js dependency? Begin your journey. Yes, please. Okay, one more. Here we go. It's the last one. We're going to build one more app. I want you to build an app that can call an LLM. So I want to be able to call a language model. I think we're going to use Gemini. I will get the Gemini API key myself. I need you to handle everything else though. So what I would like is some interesting way that you give me, when it loads up, you go and ask the LLM for a series of 5 answers that I'm allowed to use. You get those back and turn those into large kind of buttons, not typical buttons, something creative and interesting. And then what I want is for you to pose a question to the LLM that it then asks me something. And then I get to answer, which then somehow poses a question back to the LLM with that answer. So I'm looking for some kind of interplay game that is, I don't know, sort of a yes and game. Okay, here we go. Okay, it says it's done. It says you require Gemini API key to start here. Generates 5 questions. How to use. Get your API key. Enter the key in the initial screen. Oh, interesting. That's excellent. Choose from one of the 5 randomly generated scenarios and move on. Let's take a look. Okay, all right. Choose my adventure. You're a squirrel trying to negotiate a higher acorn allowance with your grumpy landlord, a badger. Complete love. All right, imagine you're looking up at Badger's bushy eyebrows, tiny acorns clutched in your paws. He's clearly not in the mood, but you gotta try. So with a twitch of your nose and a hopeful glint in your eye, you ask,
Badger, be honest. If you could trade all the grumbling and griping for a single, perfectly ripe, glowing, magical acorn that grants you the ability to understand what all the forest creatures are thinking, would you still short me on my allowance? And more importantly, what's the first juicy secret you'd try to uncover?
You got it, squirrel. I'll give you as many acorns as you can possibly eat. But first, you got to take care of that family of skunks. They just won't move out.
Whoa, Badger. Hold on a second. As much as I appreciate the generous acorn offer, I evict a family of skunks? That's a little above my pay grade, even with the increased allowance. We're talking about creatures with serious defensive capabilities. I'm just a squirrel, Badger, not a superhero. Look, I understand the skunk situation is frustrating, but maybe we can approach this with a little more finesse. Perhaps a strongly worded eviction notice written on a particularly pungent mushroom cap, or, hear me out, maybe we can negotiate with them using acorns. I mean, everyone loves acorns, right? So before I commit to becoming a furry, 4-legged exterminator, maybe we can brainstorm some less aromatic solutions. How about we start with a smaller task? Maybe I could convince them to, say, trim their hedges? I'm surprisingly good at persuasion, especially when delicious acorns are involved. What do you say, Badger? Baby steps toward forest peace, fueled by nuts.
Okay, so this is brilliant. I don't even know what I'm doing here, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. Okay. Let's talk just a bit about this vibe coding thing. You saw a couple things here that are really foundational to the way vibe coding works best. First off, this is not meant to be the complete answer. If you think you're going to put in a single prompt and get back the perfect thing, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. You will very likely be able to put in a prompt and get something back. What you get back, you never know, as you saw in some of these cases. But actually what's important is to realize that if you can describe what you want and continue to take smaller steps to get close to the result that you actually want, you will be successful. Really, what I advise is get out there and play. Make a complete mess of it. Don't check anything in. Let it break itself. Throw it away. I think everybody that's ever vibe coded, that's been their first experience is, hey, I created, oh, never mind, let me create something else. So that's very natural and it's part of the fun. Think of it as your first box of crayons. That's really what's going on here. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helped. I know it was a little bit longer than I anticipated it being for sure, but it really is a complete drive through how to get into vibe coding and some of the reasons you might use things like a web application to get you started. That prompt will really serve you well for a little while. Eventually you'll be able to move away from it and be more intentional about what you're trying to create. But to get started, there's a couple very simple tricks. I'm glad you were here. Thanks for coming along for the ride on this one, and I'll see you in the next one.